It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the air feels oddly still and even the humming of fluorescent lights overhead seems too loud. Inside a small-town grocery store tucked between a gas station and a forgotten video rental, the rhythm of life continued on, mundane, ordinary. A mother comparing cereal boxes, a teenager stocking shelves, a cashier ringing up frozen dinners and soda cans. And then him. He didn't look like the kind of man who made people nervous. That's what stuck with the cashier as she sat in a quiet back room giving her statement. He looked normal, too normal even. Wore a beige windbreaker and jeans. His hair was combed, face clean shaven. He had that soft, practiced smile some people wear when they want to be seen but not remembered. A man who could blend into any crowd. He even laughed lightly when she mentioned the weather. And then her. She was small, no more than 9 years old. Hair in uneven pigtails, a pink jacket slightly too big for her shoulders. Her eyes wandered the store with silent calculation, far too alert for a child her age. One hand clutched a carton of milk, the other gripped the edge of the conveyor belt. Next to her stood the man. Mid-30s, average build, plain clothes. Just another customer. Just another little girl holding someone's hand. And yet, something was wrong. "Is that all for you today?" the cashier asked, her voice friendly but detached, like someone running on autopilot. The man didn't respond. Instead, he gave a short nod and reached into his back pocket for a wallet. And then, just as the cashier scanned the last item, the little girl leaned forward on her toes and whispered, "He's not my real dad." The words were barely audible, but they landed with the weight of a thunderclap. The cashier's hand paused mid-scan. Her smile faltered. For a second, it seemed like she didn't hear right, or perhaps didn't want to believe what she just heard. There were only a few people left in the store now. An older man in the frozen aisle, a young couple by the bakery, and this pair. She glanced down at the child again. The girl's eyes were locked on hers, pleading, begging, not loud, not frantic, just quiet and intense. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. The cashier smiled, trying to hide the sudden storm of alarm rising inside her. She asked, carefully, "Sweetie, where's your mom?" The girl didn't answer. Her tiny fingers curled tighter around the edge of the counter. Her eyes never blinked. The man spoke for her. "She's outside," he said, his tone casual. "Waiting in the car." The cashier's fingers, still slightly trembling from the whispered confession, "He's not my real dad," moved casually across the register buttons. She kept her voice steady, her smile intact, but under the counter, her other hand brushed against a small metal switch. A silent alarm. It didn't trigger sirens or flashing lights, just a discreet signal sent to the store's lone security officer stationed a few aisles over. She hoped he saw it. Meanwhile, the man reached for the grocery bag. The girl flinched. "You ready, kiddo?" he asked. She didn't move. "I said," he repeated, voice lower this time, "you ready?" The girl nodded, slowly, but her eyes were still on the cashier. She handed over the receipt. "Thank you, sir. Hope you're both having a good day." The man nodded, adjusted the bag in his arm. "We are. Aren't we, sweetie?" The girl didn't respond. She just stared at the counter. The cashier glanced at her again, really looked. The girl's shoulders were stiff. Her face pale. Not afraid, not crying, just still. Like someone trying to disappear into themselves. Like she'd learned that making noise only made things worse. The security officer, a quiet but watchful man named Curtis, had picked up on the alert. He moved with purpose, but not speed, taking the long way around through the snack aisle, pretending to check an expired pack of chips as he approached. His eyes flicked to the front of the store where the pair stood. He saw the man. Calm. Relaxed. Saw the girl. Quiet. Rigid. Something didn't sit right. He touched the radio on his shoulder and pressed the button. "Curtis to base. We've got a possible code amber at front checkout. Quiet backup, please." A soft buzz confirmed the message was received. Back near the counter, the cashier decided to keep the conversation going, anything to delay them. "Do you two come here often? I don't think I've seen you before." The man chuckled. "Just passing through. Staying with friends. Figured I'd grab a few things for dinner." "Very thoughtful," she said, trying to mask the urgency in her eyes. The girl finally looked up. For a second, just a second, their eyes locked again. In that gaze was a silent scream. Desperation. The kind of plea you never forget. Curtis was closer now. He cleared his throat gently. "Excuse me, sir," he said, his voice polite, professional. Mind if I speak with you for a moment? The man stiffened, just slightly. His expression flickered, too fast for most to notice, but the cashier caught it. The smile faded, came back again. Curtis caught it too. Everything okay? The man asked. Nothing serious, Curtis replied. Just a quick routine check. We've had some confusion lately with kids getting separated from their parents. You know how it is. Oh, the man said, with a light laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes. No worries here. We're good, right, sweetheart? He glanced down at the girl. She nodded slowly, but she didn't smile. She didn't say a word. Mind stepping over here with me for a quick chat? Curtis asked again, this time gesturing to the edge of the store where it was a bit quieter. The man hesitated. The girl turned back to the cashier and reached out, brushing the tips of her fingers against the counter. The gesture was small, barely noticeable, but it was enough. It said, don't leave me here with him. The man gave a tight smile, still pretending all was fine. But the mask was cracking. Sure, he said. Let's talk. As Curtis walked him a few steps away, another thought surged forward, uninvited, terrifying. What if he runs? But the man didn't. Not yet. He followed Curtis toward the side, near the customer service desk, tossing a casual glance back at the girl. His expression was unreadable, something between a smirk and a warning. The girl shrank slightly in her shoes. The cashier leaned forward, speaking gently. Sweetie, can I ask you something? Just between us. The girl blinked, slowly nodded. Do you know where your mom is? Silence. Then, she was with us before. But she's not now. Where did she go? The girl looked down. I don't know. The cashier's throat tightened. Did she leave you with him? The girl hesitated, then nodded. But her lips were pressed together, like she didn't want to say more. Or couldn't. Meanwhile, just a few feet away, Curtis was asking questions of his own. What's your name, sir? Daniel. Daniel Riker. All right. And the girl? My stepdaughter. Her name's Lily. Do you have any ID? Yeah, sure. Daniel fumbled in his wallet, then handed over a driver's license. Curtis took it, his trained eyes scanning every detail. It looked real. It said Daniel Riker. Out-of-state address. And where's her mother now? Daniel exhaled, like he was growing tired of this. She's in the car. Didn't want to come in. Had a migraine. Curtis nodded slowly. We didn't see anyone in the car when you pulled up. Daniel blinked. She was there when we came in. Maybe she stepped out. Want me to go check? No need. We'll help you with that. Curtis pressed his radio again, quietly. Need a check on white Honda Civic in front lot. See if anyone's inside or nearby. A moment passed. Then the reply crackled in. Copy. Front lot's clear. 3 vehicles. No occupants. Curtis looked back at Daniel. Would you mind staying inside for a few more minutes while we sort things out? Daniel's jaw tightened. Is this really necessary? Curtis didn't blink. It is. The tension thickened like fog. Back at the register, Lily sat quietly on the small bench nearby. The cashier brought her a lollipop from the impulse rack, just to give her something. Anything. To make her feel safe. She took it, wordless. But her hand trembled. Whatever this was, it wasn't a misunderstanding. And then, just before Curtis could say another word, his radio buzzed again. Curtis, we've got a hit on the plate. The Honda's not his. It's registered to a woman reported missing 3 weeks ago. Curtis's face changed. Everything shifted. Daniel noticed. His eyes narrowed. His fingers curled. The mask fell. And Curtis, calm and steady, took a small step between Daniel and the store's exit. Sir, he said, I'm going to need you to stay exactly where you are. And for the first time since walking into the store, the man who called himself Daniel Riker didn't smile. The man blinked, his face a careful mask of confusion. Is something wrong? He asked, tilting his head just slightly, the way someone might when accused of something they haven't yet figured out. Curtis, the security officer, didn't answer right away. His eyes held steady on the man, measuring everything. His posture, his breath, the twitch of a muscle near his jaw. No, Curtis said casually, though his voice had cooled by a few degrees. Just a few questions to clear up. Wouldn't want any misunderstanding. The man gave a half smile, the kind that wants to be charming but lands just shy of it. Of course. Curtis gestured for him to step aside, away from the checkout lanes and toward the empty corner by the windows. Let's talk over here. The man followed, keeping his tone light. Look, I get it. I know how this might look. A man alone with a child. People assume things. But she's my stepdaughter. Her name's Lily. Curtis nodded once. And the mother? She's outside in the car. Wasn't feeling great. Migraine or something. We just came in to grab groceries. Curtis crossed his arms, the radio at his shoulder clicking quietly. What kind of car? White Honda Civic. You sure? The man faltered, barely. Yeah, pretty sure. Pretty sure. He chuckled awkwardly. You know how it is. I drive a truck. Her car's always messy. I just go where she tells me. Curtis didn't smile back. Mind if we bring her in? Just to clear things up. Before the man could answer, the cashier appeared beside them. Her face was pale, her hands clenched tightly around a receipt roll. She leaned close to Curtis, speaking low, but the words hit like a bell in a quiet room. She told me, he's not her real dad. Curtis's eyes sharpened instantly. The man looked between them. What? She said it just now. The cashier continued, her voice shaking. She whispered it. Right before you came. Curtis straightened. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Sir, he said, I need you to stay where you are. The man's face changed then, not panic, not anger. Something else. A brief flicker of calculation. A decision was being made behind his eyes. I already told you who I am, he said carefully. You want to ask Lily? She'll tell you the same. But Lily hadn't said anything since. Curtis gave a subtle nod toward the bench where the girls still Saturday stay here, he told the man. Then he walked back to her, crouched beside her slowly. Hey Lily, he said gently. Can I ask you something? The girl looked up, her lollipop untouched in her hand. Is that man your stepdad? She didn't speak. Curtis tried again. Did your mom drive you here today? A long pause. Then the girl whispered. No. Curtis's heart tightened. Where is she? Another pause. Then, barely audible. I don't know. He looked into her eyes. Wide, glassy, not tearful, just numb. The kind of numb that comes when fear has lasted too long. The kind children shouldn't know. Curtis stood, walked back to the man, who had returned to browsing his phone like none of this mattered. She doesn't know where her mother is, Curtis said flatly. The man didn't look up. She's tired. We've been driving since last night. She's confused. And she said you're not her real dad. The man's eyes flicked up. I told you. I'm her stepdad. Then let's find her mom. Together. A beat of silence. The man lowered his phone slowly. She's not out there, he said quietly. Curtis blinked. What do you mean? She was, the man said, when we came in. But if she's not anymore. His voice trailed off, letting the sentence dangle like bait in water. Curtis didn't bite. You're saying she left? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe she walked somewhere. Curtis didn't believe him, not for a second. But he didn't say that. Not yet. He radioed in. Dispatch, confirm again, white Honda Civic, front lot. Any sign of a woman? Anything at all? The voice came back a few seconds later. No visual. Vehicle not present at this time. Curtis turned back slowly. There's no car. At all. No Honda. You didn't just lose track of a person, you lost a whole car. The man said nothing. Just stood there, shoulders drawn, lips pursed. Curtis watched him. Tell me where the mother is. The man met his eyes and smiled. It was different this time. Not polite, not shallow. It was slow, knowing, cold. Why don't you ask Lily? Curtis's stomach turned. His hand hovered near his belt, just inches from the small can of pepper spray clipped beside his flashlight. The cashier had backed up behind the counter again, hands trembling. Lily sat frozen on the bench, eyes darting between the two men like a rabbit trapped in a shrinking clearing. Then, a sharp sound outside. Tires screeching. A white car darted past the front of the store and vanished into traffic. Curtis lunged toward the window, radioing frantically. White Honda Civic just fled the scene, heading west. I repeat, suspect vehicle westbound. But by the time backup reached the door, the car was gone. The man didn't run. He just stood there, smiling. Curtis turned back slowly. Who was driving that car, he demanded. The man only said one thing. His voice was calm, still warm, but the words were ice. She wasn't supposed to come back. Curtis stared, and for the first time, a ripple of true fear moved through the store. The store manager, a balding man in his late 50s with a habit of rubbing the back of his neck when nervous, had already queued up the security footage. He fumbled a little with the controls, but eventually got it playing on the screen in the office tucked behind the customer service counter. Curtis, now joined by a uniformed officer who'd just arrived on backup, stood watching intently. The timestamp flickered in the corner of the screen. The camera caught the automatic glass doors sliding open at 2:43 p.m. There she was, the girl Lily, holding the man's hand. Her body small, fragile, uncertain. But the mother? She wasn't there. Curtis leaned in, eyes narrowing. "Rewind it," he said. The manager did. Played it again. The pair entered alone. Curtis folded his arms slowly, the truth sinking in deeper. She never walked in. Behind them, the backup officer, Officer Rivera, glanced toward the window. "That white Honda Civic's long gone," he said. "Check traffic cams on the corner." It never came back after leaving. "Maybe she walked off," the man offered from his seat across the room. But his voice was thinner now. The calmness was fraying. Curtis turned to face him fully. "You said she stayed in the car. Now you're saying she left." The man rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Look, I don't know. Maybe she went to the gas station next door. Maybe she got sick and didn't want to be around people. Then why didn't she take her phone? Or her wallet?" The man said nothing. Curtis took a step closer. "She never came in with you. And now the car is gone. That's not a coincidence. I told you. You told us a lie," Curtis said, firm now. "And I think you've told this little girl more than one." Lily sat quietly in a chair beside the desk, legs swinging gently, the untouched lollipop still clutched in her hand. She didn't look at anyone, just at the floor. Curtis crouched beside her again, lowering his voice. "Lily, earlier you said you were supposed to go to your aunt's." She nodded, "Just once." "Was your mom with you when she said that?" "Still no eye contact. Just a soft, nearly whispered answer. Yes." "Did your stepdad say anything?" The girl hesitated. "Then, he didn't talk much. He just drove." Curtis looked up. "Where were you before you came here?" She shrugged faintly. "A motel, I think. I was asleep in the back seat." Curtis's jaw tensed. "Did your mom seem scared?" Lily said nothing at first. Then, after a moment that stretched far too long, "She told me not to make noise." Curtis stood. He'd heard enough to know this wasn't just a family spat or a misunderstanding. Whatever had happened before they entered the store, it wasn't right. And whatever was happening now, it was only getting worse. The man, still seated in the corner of the office, tried again. "You're twisting everything. Kids get confused. You think you've got something just because she didn't walk in? Come on. Maybe she dropped us off and left. Maybe she went to get gas. Then why did the girl say you were all coming here together?" Officer Rivera cut in. "Why did she think you were going to her aunt's?" "I don't know what my wife told her." The man snapped, suddenly agitated. "Kids make stuff up. But no one was buying it anymore." Curtis exchanged a look with Rivera. Quiet. Sharp. Then Rivera said, "Let's check the rest of the security footage, outside angles. See if the car was ever parked. If she really stayed inside." The man shifted in his seat. That was when Curtis saw it, the hands, twitching slightly, rubbing his thumb against his fingers like he couldn't stop the motion. He was nervous, really nervous. Back in the security office, the manager pulled up the outside camera angle facing the parking lot. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. At 2:41 p.m., a white Honda Civic turned into the lot, parked in the second row. The man got out first, walked around to the back passenger door, pulled it open. Lily stepped out sleepily, rubbing her eyes. She looked confused. The man reached for her hand. But the front passenger door, where the mother should have been, never opened. She wasn't there. Not then. Not ever. Curtis leaned in. Zoom in on the front seat. The manager adjusted the controls. The driver's side was empty. So was the passenger's. Curtis turned back to Rivera. He picked her up from somewhere. But not with her mother. "Then where's the mom?" Rivera asked. Curtis didn't answer. He looked back at the man, whose leg now bounced slightly with nervous energy. A sheen of sweat coated his forehead. His calm demeanor was fully gone. "I want to talk to Lily again," Curtis said. "Alone?" Rivera nodded and stepped out of the room with the man. The door clicked shut behind them. Curtis kneeled once more beside Lily. "Lily," he said gently, "did you see your mom today at all?" She nodded slowly. "In the morning? Was it at the motel?" "Yeah." "Did she say anything strange?" The girl frowned, thinking. "She packed bags. She looked scared." Curtis's voice was barely a whisper now. "Did she and your stepdad argue?" The girl nodded again. Then, after a long pause, she said, "She wanted to go home." He said no. Curtis felt a chill move down his spine. He stood again, turned back to the monitor. "Go back," he told the manager, to before the car pulled in. The footage rewound. 2:39, 2:38, 2:37. Then, a strange detail. Curtis squinted. The Honda had pulled in and waited for almost 2 minutes. The brake lights stayed on. Then, just before the man exited the driver's seat, he opened the passenger door, leaned over, and pulled something out. It looked like a large bag. Curtis froze the frame. He stared, then leaned closer. That wasn't a bag. It was a blanket. Heavy, folded, but lumpy. He felt his pulse spike. "Rivera," Curtis called, pushing open the office door. Rivera and the man were just outside, the man now leaning against the wall, muttering to himself. "We found something," Curtis said, staring right at him. The man's face went blank. "What kind of something?" Rivera asked. Curtis didn't take his eyes off the man as he said, "Something suspicious in the footage." The man's hands slowly curled into fists, and behind his eyes, something dark uncoiled, as if a carefully buried secret had just been dragged to the surface. Curtis stared at the footage again, this time with another pair of eyes next to him, a young tech from the precinct who specialized in license plate identification and digital evidence. The clip was paused, time-stamped at 2:35 p.m., several minutes before the man and the girl entered the store. "Here," the tech said, pointing at the screen. "Watch closely." In the footage, the man steps out of the white Honda Civic, glancing around the lot as if casually surveying his surroundings. But then he walks to the back of the vehicle and opens the trunk. From it, he retrieves something wrapped in a towel. He crouches, and a moment later, stands up holding what's unmistakably a license plate. Curtis's breath caught. He fast-forwards the footage slightly. The man walks to the front of the vehicle, then to the back. Each time, he bends over briefly. "Swapping the plates," the tech murmured. "Front and rear." Why the hell would he do that unless? Curtis didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. It wasn't his car. Curtis stepped out of the surveillance room immediately and signaled Rivera. "We've got a plate swap." This guy walked in here with a stolen identity, fake car tags, and a little girl who says he's not her real father. Rivera didn't hesitate. The man, who had been pretending to casually scroll through his phone, barely had time to look up before he was pinned and cuffed. "You said this was your wife's car," Rivera said through gritted teeth. "Turns out, she's not your wife. And this isn't your car." The man didn't say a word. He didn't even look surprised. But Lily saw it all happen. The takedown, the shouting, and she froze. Her lower lip began to quiver. The lollipop she'd held tightly the entire time finally dropped from her hand, bouncing once on the tile floor before rolling under a chair. Curtis knelt beside her once more, this time not with questions, but comfort. "It's okay," he said gently. "He can't hurt you anymore." She looked up at him, tear tracks now streaking her cheeks. And then she whispered, "He said if I told, I'd never see my real dad again." Curtis blinked. She sniffled, then added, "He said Daddy's dead, but I know he's not." "I know it." Curtis gently touched her shoulder. "Why do you think he's still alive?" Lily hesitated. Then she reached into her small pink jacket and pulled something from the inner pocket. It was folded tightly, edges frayed and worn from being opened and closed 100 times. A photograph. In it, a man with kind eyes, holding her on his lap, both smiling in what looked like a sunny backyard barbecue. A woman, likely her mother, was just out of frame. But Lily wasn't looking at the picture anymore. She was clutching it to her chest. "He used to pick me up after school," she murmured. "He'd bring me those peanut butter cupcakes I like. He always let me sing in the car, even if I was off key." She smiled for a second. Then it vanished. One day he just stopped coming. Curtis's chest tightened. "Do you know where he went?" "I don't know. Mommy said he had to leave for work. But then she cried every night. Then we moved. Then she changed." Curtis stood and exchanged a glance with Rivera, who just re-entered with more news. "We ran the VIN," Rivera said. "The car was reported missing 4 days ago. But that's not all." Curtis raised a brow. "It belongs to a woman named Abigail Dorsey." "Who's that?" "Single mother. Age 32. Went missing 2 weeks ago." Curtis's heart sank. What's her connection to this guy? "We don't know yet. But get this. She disappeared with her 6-year-old son. Neither has been found." Curtis turned toward the interrogation room window where the man now sat cuffed to a steel chair, his posture calm again, almost unnervingly so. "Does he look like someone who just stole a car?" Curtis asked. Rivera shook his head. "No. He looks like someone who's done this before." Curtis felt a chill crawl up his spine. He turned back toward Lily, who was still quietly watching them from her seat near the back of the office. "Hey, Lily," he asked gently. She looked up. "Do you remember the last place he took you before coming here?" She thought for a moment. There was a house. Not a real one. It smelled weird. There were no pictures. No windows. Curtis blinked. No windows. Just one door. Always locked. Her voice was flat. Mechanical now. "He only let me eat crackers and applesauce. He said we had to wait. But he didn't say what for." Curtis stood abruptly. "Get forensics down here now," he told Rivera. "And call the task force. If this guy is connected to more missing people, we need to act fast." Rivera nodded and stepped out to make the calls. Back in the surveillance room, the tech had just finished zooming in on the moment the man swapped plates. Curtis leaned in. The man looked so calm, so methodical, like he was running errands, not orchestrating a kidnapping. Then something caught his eye. A small reflection in the Civic's rear window, almost missed in the glare. Curtis had the tech enhance it. There, in the reflection, was a partially visible sticker, one that read "Property of Greenfield Mental Health." Curtis frowned. "Give me a list of recent discharges from Greenfield," he told the tech, "especially those under supervised release." The tech blinked. "You think he was a patient? I think we're dealing with someone who shouldn't be free." Curtis turned away, his mind spinning. Outside, Lily sat holding the photo of her real dad, her eyes red, her voice gone quiet. And just across the hallway, a man with no name, no car, and no conscience waited, silently watching everyone through the glass. But the worst part? They still didn't know where the missing woman was, or her 6-year-old son, and every second they waited could be too late. The investigation moved fast now. The man was officially in custody, but his identity remained murky. The ID he provided turned out to be fake, just like his story. There was no mother waiting in the car. No family at all. Curtis had spent hours bouncing between calls, checking missing person reports, cross-referencing the fake plates, and coordinating with the local FBI branch. And then the first big break came in. Rivera rushed in with the case file in hand. "The babysitter," he said breathlessly. "That woman, Abigail Dorsey. She's not the girl's mother." Curtis straightened. "What? She's her babysitter. Hired 3 months ago. Real mom is believed to live outside the state. Divorced the father last year. The dad was granted full custody 6 months ago." Curtis's eyes narrowed. "Then where is he?" Rivera handed him another sheet. "We just got off the phone with him. He's been trying to find his daughter for 3 weeks. Says she was supposed to be with Abigail that weekend. When neither of them came back, he filed a missing persons report. It just got buried, mishandled. Local PD thought Abigail ran off with the kid." Curtis felt a hot wave of nausea. "And this guy?" Rivera shook his head. "No connection. Not through the dad. Not through the mom. Not even Abigail. We still don't know who he is." Curtis rubbed his face. A child stolen under the illusion of trust. A missing babysitter. And a predator hiding in plain sight. Down the hall, Lily sat quietly in a room with a social worker. But Curtis needed more answers, and this time, gently. He entered the room, crouched beside her. "Hey, Lily," he said softly. "You remember when you told us about him coming to your school?" She nodded slowly. "He told me Daddy sent him. He said Daddy was sick and couldn't come get me. He said I had to go with him." Curtis' voice stayed steady. "Had you seen him before that?" She paused. "Only one time. I think he was watching me at the park." Curtis's heart dropped. He had planned this. Stalked. Watched. Waited. She added, "When I said I wanted to call my dad, he said I'd never see him again if I didn't listen." Curtis gave her a reassuring smile and left the room, fists clenched. This wasn't just abduction. This was calculated, predatory, and likely part of something bigger. The cashier, meanwhile, was still on site. Her name was Emily, mid-30s, kind face, and visibly shaken. I can't stop thinking about it," she said. The way she looked at me, like she needed someone to see her. "You did the right thing," Curtis told her. "I know," Emily whispered. "But what if I hadn't?" Curtis didn't answer. He didn't have to. Emily sat in silence for a beat before speaking again. "When I asked him if he found everything okay, he said, 'We've got everything we need.'" And the way he looked at her, like she was property, not a child. Curtis wrote it all down. Every little clue mattered now. And then came another call. It was from a unit dispatched to the address linked to the fake ID. The house. Abandoned. Outskirts of town. Wooded. Quiet. But what they found inside, Curtis wasn't prepared for it. "Sir," The officer on the other end said, voice tight. We're going to need you out here. Curtis and Rivera were there within the hour. The house was small and tucked into a clearing, almost invisible from the road. The front door had been left unlocked. Inside, the air was cold and still. But it wasn't the silence that made Curtis's skin crawl. It was the smell. Not rot. Not mold. Bleach. Rooms stripped of furniture. No photos. No dishes. Just empty shelves and a humming fridge filled with bottles of water and applesauce packs, the kind kids eat. One room had a mattress on the floor. Just one. And chains drilled into the wall nearby. The carpet beneath it was stained dark. Next to it, a child's pink sock. Curtis turned away while rising. Rivera emerged from the other room, face pale. You need to see this, he said quietly. In what looked like a makeshift study, there was a table filled with old photographs, articles, and maps. Curtis leaned in. It wasn't just pictures of Lily. It was pictures of other children. Playgrounds, schoolyards, parking lots. And on each photo, a handwritten label. Target. Some had red excess. Some were circled. Some were missing entirely. But Lily's? Hers was marked with a single word. Secured. Curtis felt the blood drain from his face. What the hell is this? Rivera didn't answer. He was staring at a corkboard on the wall. Strings connecting cities. Faces of children. Some crossed out. Some still pinned. And in the center of it all, a man's ID photo. Not the fake one, but the real one. The same man in custody. And beneath it, scribbled in blocky handwriting. They never suspect the quiet ones. Curtis stepped back, heart pounding. This wasn't just one kidnapping. This was the blueprint for many. And he had just caught a hunter in the middle of his game. The raid on the rural house began at dawn. Floodlights cut through the early fog as unmarked cruisers surrounded the isolated property. Officers moved in with precision, their boots crunching over gravel and twigs. No one expected to find the man there. He was already in custody, but what they did expect was evidence. Proof of intent. Connections. What they found went far beyond that. Inside, the air was eerily clean, antiseptic even, like the entire place had been scrubbed repeatedly. One room was clearly meant for a child. Small bed, pink comforter, new toys, still in boxes. A mini fridge filled with juice boxes, cut fruit, and yogurt. Coloring books on the floor, each one carefully opened to the first page. Crayons untouched. Everything perfectly set, as if waiting for someone. But it wasn't the child's room that rattled the officers most. It was the locked room across the hall. Heavy-duty padlock, reinforced hinges, blackout curtains. Inside, after forcing the door, they discovered a chilling setup, a soundproof chamber. No windows. A camera mounted in the corner. A small chair bolted to the floor. Next to it, a child's blanket, stained and fraying. It was clear. He had done this before, and he had prepared to do it again. Detectives combing the house found a trunk beneath the floorboards. Inside, notebooks labeled by date and name. Files, clippings, journal entries, drawings, and then letters. Some folded, some crumpled, others pristine, sealed in envelopes addressed to one person. Lily. None had ever been sent. The letters varied in tone, some tender, others rambling, some disturbingly poetic. One in particular stood out. Scrawled in messy handwriting, it read, "You're safer with me than him. He doesn't understand how to protect you. He's distracted, broken. I see you. I've always seen you. And I will make sure no one ever hurts you again." Curtis stared at the letter for a long time, heart pounding. Who was him? They assumed it was the father, Lily's biological dad, who'd only just been tracked down. But there was something about the tone, the bitterness, that didn't sound like a stranger commenting on an ex's parenting. It sounded personal. An officer entered the room. "The father's on his way," he said. Curtis nodded. "Good. I want to hear what he has to say." An hour later, a black sedan pulled up outside the station. The man who stepped out was in his early 40s. Worn suit. Thin, pale face. Eyes dark from lack of sleep. He introduced himself as Daniel Fields, Lily's father. Curtis met him in the interview room. "Mr. Fields, thank you for coming." Daniel nodded, expression unreadable. "Where is she?" "She's safe," Curtis said. "But there are things we need to clarify. First, we need to know, do you recognize this man?" He placed a photo on the table. Daniel leaned in. Something flickered in his expression. Anger? Fear? Recognition? "I've seen him," Daniel said slowly. "Once. At a park. Last summer. He was watching her from across the playground. I thought he was just another parent. I asked if he was okay, and he walked off. You never reported it? I didn't have a reason to, Daniel replied, defensively. You think every man near a swing set is a kidnapper? Maybe I should have. Maybe. Curtis pressed forward. This man took Lily from her babysitter 3 weeks ago. We believe he posed as someone sent by you. We also found letters he wrote her. Some refer to you. Specifically this one. He slid the letter across the table. Daniel read the words. His hands began to tremble. You're safer with me than him. Daniel exhaled sharply. That son of a bitch. Do you know what he's talking about? Curtis asked. Why would he think Lily was unsafe with you? Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back. His face was changing. Not fear, not confusion, guilt. My ex-wife, he said finally. She tried to argue I wasn't stable enough. Said I had episodes. I never hurt Lily. Never. But I wasn't perfect either. There were some things I was trying to work through. Curtis watched him carefully. Mental health issues. Daniel nodded. I had a breakdown a few years ago. Therapy helped. I've been clean since. I fought hard for custody, and the court sided with me. Could he have known about that? Curtis asked. Daniel shrugged. I don't know. Maybe. But it was sealed. The custody case wasn't public. Unless someone close to the situation told him, Curtis added. The implication hung in the air. Was this abductor someone who had ties to Daniel's past? Someone who believed they were doing the right thing? Or something darker? Someone obsessed with the illusion of saving Lily from a father he saw as broken? Daniel swallowed. Can I see her? Curtis hesitated. Soon. But we need to make sure she's ready. Then came a knock on the door. An officer stepped in. You'll want to see this, he said, holding a folder. Curtis flipped it open. Inside, a background report. The suspect's real name, Michael Lorne. Former child psychologist. License revoked 7 years ago. Termination reason, unethical attachment to a patient's child. Curtis looked up, heart racing. There was the answer. He had known Daniel. Probably through therapy. He had seen Lily before. Formed a twisted attachment. Convinced himself the child needed saving. This wasn't a random abduction. It was targeted. In the final folder from the raid, officers find a photo of Lily in her school uniform, taken from across the street. The date? Nearly 2 years ago. Beneath it, in chilling red ink, are the words, "She was always meant to be mine." Detective Curtis leaned against the observation window, watching Daniel Field sit quietly in the interrogation room. The man was calm, eerily so, hands folded neatly, gaze fixed ahead, too composed for a father whose daughter had nearly vanished. Curtis had interviewed dozens of parents in crisis, some frantic, others devastated. Daniel didn't seem broken. He seemed calculated. The door opened behind him. Officer Graves entered with a thick folder, pulled up Daniel's full background. Curtis flipped through the pages, frowning as he read. What's this? CPS file. 5 years ago, he was investigated for alleged child abuse. Anonymous tip. Curtis's eyes narrowed. Lily would have been 4. Graves nodded. Case was dropped. No physical evidence. Witnesses were inconsistent. But it's there. Curtis exhaled slowly. And no follow-up since. Nope. Not until today. In the child support unit, Lily sat quietly with a soft blanket over her shoulders. A psychologist gently coaxed her into drawing while speaking in soft tones. She didn't say much, but her eyes never stopped scanning the room, every corner, every shadow. Then, she picked up a crayon and began to draw. At first, it seemed like a house. A girl standing inside, near a window, a large eye peeking in from the dark. The psychologist's voice was barely audible. Sweetheart, who's that outside? Lily paused. He was always watching. Who? Lily's eyes flickered. I don't know, but he was there. Before school. At the park. He'd wave sometimes. Then hide. The doctor leaned forward. Did you tell your dad? I tried, Lily said. He got mad. Said I make up stories. Curtis was watching from the monitor. The crayon slipped from his fingers. Back in the interview room, Curtis slid the CPS file across the table. Care to explain this? Daniel scanned it quickly, then exhaled through his nose. It was nothing. A neighbor saw Lily crying once after she scraped her knee. Decided to play hero. I was investigated. They found no signs of abuse. End of story. Curtis didn't respond right away. Just tapped a finger on the file. She says you didn't believe her. About a man watching her. Waving. Daniel's expression faltered. just for a second. I didn't see anyone. Maybe I didn't want to believe it. She'd say strange things. I chalked it up to her imagination. Her mom was gone. She was processing. Curtis leaned in. So you ignored it. Daniel said nothing. Later that evening, the girl was moved to a child advocacy center. A safe room, plush toys, calm lighting. Another specialist asked, "Do you want to go home, Lily?" She hesitated. Her lips trembled. "I don't want to go home to either of them." The room fell silent. The specialist gently asked, "Why not?" Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "Because nobody listens." Across the precinct, Curtis met with the DA to discuss custody. "We need to tread carefully," she said. "If there's even a hint of risk in either direction, the court may assign temporary guardianship to the state." Curtis nodded. "She's scared, and not just of the man who took her. Her father's hiding something. I can feel it." Meanwhile, Lily's drawing was being analyzed. Not just the one with the eye at the window. She had drawn others. One showed a man with a badge. Not an officer, but some kind of uniform. Another showed her in a small room, holding a red flower. There were no flowers in the man's house. But in the letters they found, one included a pressed red daisy with a note. "You said you liked these." He'd been close. Closer than anyone realized. The online world exploded. Comments rolled in by the thousands. "This poor girl. She doesn't trust anyone. That says everything. Her dad gives me a weird vibe. Too calm. Too perfect. What if the man who took her was trying to protect her? Who's the real villain here? The cashier is the real MVP. Imagine being in her shoes. I hope that child gets a real chance. Away from all of them." The public was torn. Was the father a negligent parent with a buried past? Or had he genuinely fought to protect a daughter who'd been manipulated by a predator? And what about the abductor? Was he truly deranged? Or had he once seen something no one else would acknowledge? Back in the quiet observation room, Detective Curtis stared at Lily through the glass. She sat cross-legged, her hands in her lap, looking small and lost. There were no monsters in the room. But clearly, there had been, somewhere. And now, the most chilling part of all, she didn't know who to be afraid of anymore. Cliffhanger. That night, as officers log final evidence from the man's home, they discover a box of VHS tapes marked with names and dates. None of them Lily's. One tape is missing. The label reads only, "Property of Daniel Fields." The room was small but warm, lined with colorful cushions and soft lighting. A counselor sat across from Lily, a clipboard in her lap she barely used. She was trained to listen, not interrogate. And Lily, still curled into herself, said nothing for several minutes. Outside the room, Child Protective Services finalized the paperwork. Lily was now officially in protective custody. Temporarily, at least. No one, not her father, not the man who took her, was allowed contact. Lily glanced up at the counselor. Her voice was a whisper. "Is my dog okay?" The counselor tilted her head. "Your dog?" Lily nodded, fingers pulling at the blanket on her lap. "His name is Button. Dad got mad and kicked him. His leg got all weird after that." A beat passed. The counselor didn't flinch, didn't even blink. "Did Button go to the vet?" "No. Dad said dogs are supposed to be tough. He said it's better this way, so Button learns." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "He kept saying I had to be tougher, too. Like a soldier." The counselor gently leaned forward. "And the man you were with? What did he say?" Lily looked toward the wall, as if picturing something far away. "He said I was brave, that I didn't deserve this life. He said I could have a new one. One where people were kind." She paused. "Where people listened." At the police precinct, the man, whose real name was Alan Myers, sat in a holding room. The confession came faster than expected. "She's my niece," he said. Detective Curtis stiffened. "Explain." Alan took a deep breath. "Her mother was my sister, Claire Myers. She died in a car accident 7 years ago. She was pregnant when it happened, and the baby survived." "Lily." He paused, blinking rapidly. But Claire's name was scrubbed from everything. Daniel, her ex, had money, lawyers. He won sole custody. I wasn't even allowed at the funeral. He said I wasn't family." Curtis crossed his arms. "Why didn't you go through legal channels?" Alan laughed bitterly. "I tried. No one wanted to hear from the estranged uncle. No blood relation to the child. At least, that's how the court saw it. I didn't even have visitation rights. Then you disappeared." "I didn't disappear. I watched. I waited. Every birthday, every first day of school. I kept hoping he'd soften. Let me in. He leaned forward now, voice rising. But every time I saw Lily, she looked more broken, quieter, like something inside her was disappearing. Curtis remained expressionless. So you decided to abduct her. I decided to save her. Meanwhile, at the Child Advocacy Center, the counselor continued speaking with Lily. She had begun drawing again. This time a house. One side broken and jagged, full of storm clouds. The other, a forest, with a little cabin and sunshine. A bridge connected the two. The counselor gently asked, "Where were you going?" Lily looked down. The bridge. Why? Because the man said there was a place where no one yells. No one drinks. No one hurts dogs. No one forgets you. The counselor's throat tightened. Back at the station, Detective Curtis received a call. Forensics had confirmed the man's identity, Alan Myers, Claire's brother. Everything he said about the family matched the records. Except one detail. Daniel Fields had lied about how long Lily's mother had been out of the picture. He always claimed she left when Lily was a baby. The truth? Claire died with Lily still in her womb. Lily had never even met her. Curtis stepped out into the hallway, processing. Two men, both holding secrets. One who had the law on his side, but something dark behind closed doors. The other, a vigilante uncle who believed he was saving his niece from a system that refused to protect her. That evening, Lily was tucked into a temporary foster home. A kind older couple who had worked with child services before. The woman gave Lily a handmade stuffed bunny. "It's okay if you don't talk," she said softly. "You're safe here." But Lily did talk. Not to them, but to the bunny. In the quiet of the night, she whispered, "I hope the man's not mad at me. I didn't mean to say anything. I just got scared." She hugged the bunny tighter. "But I don't want to go back. Not to yelling. Not to Button crying all night. Not to pretending I'm okay." She pulled the covers over her head. Maybe the bridge is gone now. Across town, Curtis stood over a table strewn with files, photos, and court records. The pieces didn't fit neatly. Alan Myers had no legal rights. No visitation. He had planned an abduction. But was he dangerous? Or desperate? He had letters. He had gifts saved up. He never hurt Lily. Never frightened her. In fact, she had begun to believe in his promises. And Daniel, who claimed to love his daughter, had buried her mother's memory, suppressed an abuse report, and treated Lily's suffering like inconvenience. Curtis tapped his pen against the file. The law said Lily belonged with her father. But Curtis wasn't so sure anymore. And just before the scene ends, one more thread unravels. A clerk from a veterinary clinic calls in. They report a visit from Daniel Fields just 2 months ago. A dog with a fractured leg. The report says, injury consistent with blunt force trauma. Name of the dog, Button. The final line of the report, owner refused treatment. Dog left untreated. As the story settles into the quiet aftermath, the frantic pace slows, leaving a heavy silence hanging in the air. A silence full of questions, doubts, and unresolved pain. The store lights are dimmed in our minds now. The little girl's whispered words echo like a fragile heartbeat, barely heard but impossible to ignore. "He's not my real dad." Those 5 words shattered an illusion. A moment where innocence collided with something far darker than any shopper expected. And yet, what does that truth really mean? It is not a simple story of good versus evil. It is messy, complicated, human. A man who claimed to be a stepfather, or a father figure, was revealed as someone without legal rights, acting out of a desperate conviction that he was rescuing a child from a broken world. But his methods were wrong, illegal, dangerous. At the same time, the real father, grappling with his own past, anger, and neglect, had failed to protect the girl in the way she needed most. A fractured family, splintered by loss, trauma, and silence. Imagine standing in the cashier's shoes for a moment. A quiet grocery store humming with the usual noise. A small voice, barely audible, breaks through. "He's not my real dad." Do you freeze? Do you look away? Do you call for help? Or do you respect the fear behind those words, unsure if you might make things worse? There is no easy answer. Because in this story, there are no clear villains. There are people trying to protect in their own flawed ways. There are parents who love but fail. There are children caught in the crossfire, left wondering who to trust. And the man who took the girl, Alan Myers, was not a stranger. He was family, a man who had loved her mother, who had watched helplessly as the system shut him out, who made a terrible choice, believing it was for the best. His actions were wrong. The law must hold him accountable. But does he deserve punishment or help? Could understanding and healing break this cycle? We are left with more questions than answers, more shadows than light, and the haunting reality that sometimes the people we fear the most are afraid themselves. Afraid of loss, afraid of being powerless, afraid of a world that refuses to listen. So now we turn to you, the witness to this story. What would you have done if you were the cashier? Would you have noticed? Would you have dared to act? And when the truth unfolds like this, complex, painful, human, how should justice respond? Should the man be punished to the fullest extent of the law? Or should he be helped, guided toward healing for himself and the girl? The answers are not easy, but your voice matters. Your thoughts matter. Your empathy matters. Drop your thoughts below. Join the conversation. Because every story like this reminds us, beneath the headlines, beyond the whispers, there are real people, real pain, and a chance for real change. Hope that kindness will rise, that justice will listen, that little voices will be heard, and that the bridges we build between pain and healing, fear and trust, will one day bring us home. What would you do? What would you say? Tell us your story, because sometimes sharing is the first step to saving a life.